My name's Wayne Schofield. I've been working with engine management systems since the 1980s. Through that time, I've seen the evolution of the diagnosis of faults with engine management systems. In the early days, you were using external devices, so multimeters, oscilloscopes. They evolved into parallel systems, such as the auto-diagnose parallel system that worked on a breakout basis. And eventually, we had onboard systems, where the ECU itself did its own diagnosis and stores faults as code numbers. It's retrieving those code numbers that gives us the fault codes that we're familiar with today. Those systems have evolved. There's been evolution and revolution through the years, and I believe the OBD X BOX is the next revolution in vehicle diagnostics. I'd just like to introduce you to the contents of the Technician's Toolkit. There's the main unit itself. It's a robust unit intended for daily workshop use. There's a cable to connect it to the car. It's got plenty of length to get you connected to the OBD port. On occasions where the OBD port is not very accessible, there's an OBD port extender. It sometimes makes it more helpful. To connect the unit to your laptop or your Android device, there's a Bluetooth module. If you don't want to use Bluetooth, you can connect directly using the USB. There's a beeper that works alongside the DTC alerter function, and that function we'll get to later. The software comes on a USB stick. If you want to download the latest version of the software, you can scan the QR code, go to the website, and the latest version of the software will be there. It's designed to work on cars and light commercial vehicles, predominantly using the CAN bus protocol, but there are K-line options available. Normally the technician would use the OBD X BOX from sitting inside the vehicle, but for the purposes of demonstration, we've got the unit connected into the OBD port, and we've got an interface box here to introduce faults into the system for the OBD X BOX to pick up the faults that are generated by the ECU. We've already connected the OBD X BOX to the vehicle, and now we're going through the software side of the application. So open the application. The installation is self-explanatory, so we don't need to go through the installation. You're greeted by the OBD X BOX welcome screen. Click enter. You then have the warning and disclaimer screen. You need to read this and agree to the terms and conditions. Some important information. The next screen then is an overview of OBD X BOX functions, one of which is the Bluetooth module. The passcode for the Bluetooth module is 1234. We've decided to connect to this vehicle using Bluetooth. You can click anywhere on this screen to move to the next screen. The next screen is to do with Jaguar Land Rover vehicles. Those of you who are used to working on Jaguar Land Rover will probably already know that some of those vehicles have connection issues to several scan tools, not just this one. So you may need to consider this before using OBD X BOX on a Jaguar Land Rover vehicle. The next screen is the actual program itself. At the bottom left of that screen, you've got three icons. The first two are the ones we're interested in at the moment. The left one is the connection between the OBD X BOX and the laptop. And the next icon is the connection between the OBD X BOX and the vehicle. So if you click connection at the top left of the screen, choose your COM port, and then bottom left you'll see the OBD X BOX to laptop icon go green, and then the vehicle icon will go green. That's it, we're connected, we're in, and we can continue using the software. Let's walk through the basic functions of each of the buttons on the software. Is a single press codes refresh. This is the same function as read codes on a regular scan tool. When you click the button, there's a colour change to show that it has been activated. You can click this whenever you choose to refresh the code read. We've introduced a fault and then rectified on the vehicle. This will trigger the engine management light, and by clicking the single press refresh, we see the fault code air temperature sensor circuit high. Click to delete that fault code, refresh the page, and the fault code is gone. It's the same basic function as an ordinary scan tool. So now we've covered the single press codes refresh, we're going to cover the continuous codes refresh. This scans for codes constantly at the refresh rate chosen, and as faults appear, they'll appear in the pending and registered boxes. Erasing the codes will only momentarily get rid of the DTCs because the faults are still present on the vehicle. Having dealt with the continuous codes refresh, we're now going to look at the play, pause, auto deleting button. So we set the automatic refresh, the continuous refresh button going. We've introduced a permanent fault to the vehicle. This has now been registered. If we double click on the fault code, it appears in the auto deleting list. If we then click on the auto delete function, it deletes the code. Because we haven't fixed the fault, the code comes back again. You may notice to the right of the code is a counter. It's now showing us it's appeared twice. This is a very powerful tool for diagnosing intermittent faults because you can determine how frequently they're occurring. Should another DTC occur, the OBD X box pauses deletion. The status of the pause can be shown at the bottom left of the engine management light. It appears with a cross in it to tell you that the OBD X box has paused deleting. The second code is not in the delete list, so it will no longer be deleting the first code. Should we add the second code to the delete list by double clicking, it now appears in the delete list and the deletion will continue. That's the auto deleting button dealt with. The next button is a single press codes delete. This performs the same function as delete codes or erase codes might do on a scanner that you're familiar with. You can press this whenever you want to delete the codes that are recorded. The next button, the continuous codes delete button, is one of the features that makes the OBD X box such a powerful tool. Clicking this tells the OBD X box to continually delete codes as they appear. The default frequency is 0.2 seconds between delete commands. This can be adjusted by clicking the arrows next to the box, or you can manually type in the number you require in the box, seconds. I'm sure you'll see from the features we've covered that the continuous codes delete could be a very, very powerful workshop tool, allowing you to perform functions that are otherwise impossible with any other scan tool. The next button is the OBD health check. Now, we've all had a scenario where there can be a fault that is influenced by many other factors. Fuel rail pressure problems, EGR problems. An ECU determines what is at fault by comparing one parameter with several other parameters. Now, usually that is adequate to pinpoint the fault, but sometimes if it's comparing 3 variables and 2 of them are at fault, it'll sometimes put the item that is not at fault as being the fault code because there's parity between the 2 faulty parameters. So you're getting an incorrect code. So to be able to continuously identify fault codes coming up, select them for auto deleting and delete them, and then studying the frequency of the codes coming up, it gives a much better understanding of what is really at fault, because it's not always the first fault that comes up. There's a minimum time setting of 5 seconds. That allows codes which may ordinarily be missed, it allows those codes to come through and be caught. The last button is the factory reset button. It resets the settings to the defaults. The defaults we've found are suitable for most cases. If you've had a vehicle in that has required some specific adjustments to the settings, it's sensible to reset to the factory defaults before using it on the next vehicle, so that you're not using parameters that are not suitable for a typical job. Are you sure you want to reset? Yes, you can see they've now reset to the defaults. Personally, I prefer to use the laptop. It's a bigger screen and there's more information available at one glance. However, if you want to use a mobile phone or an Android device, all the information's on the screen. That's the codes list screen. You can touch the tab to go to the next screen, or you can just swipe. That's the codes list. That's your settings page. So you can see you've got options for connecting to the OBD X box when in the vehicle. If a laptop is too cumbersome for your situation, you can use your mobile phone. If we had a situation where a particular DTC was making the vehicle run in limp mode, we can get it out of limp mode by selecting the fault code to add it into the auto delete list. Play the auto delete function, go into settings and set the auto delete frequency as fast as possible. This will go all the way down to 0.1 seconds. So the code will be deleted 10 times every second. In this mode, the OBD X box is reading DTCs, checking if the DTC is in the auto delete list and deleting it if it is in the list. This read, check, delete takes some time, and even though the delete time may be very low to delete quickly, you may sometimes see the engine management light flicker on and off because the loop isn't as fast as the refresh. If the read, check and delete mode is not fast enough, then it's possible to use the continuous delete button. This just repeatedly deletes the codes without reading them back. The benefit of this is a faster delete, but you won't get the fault code counter counting up because the codes are not being read, they are simply being deleted. You may think, why do we want to stop the vehicle going into limp mode? Well, sometimes a vehicle being in limp mode masks other problems. So you may have a problem with the fuel pressure, fuel rail pressure regulation. You need to know whether it's a fuel supply issue. Is it the lift pump in the tank? Is it the high pressure pump? Is it a regulation problem? Is the regulator valve sticking? Is it faulty? Is it not being driven correctly by the ECU? And sometimes when the car goes into limp mode, it prevents you from seeing the real root of the problem. DTCs don't tell you everything. They are a window into what's going on. You have to be able to see what it is that's faulty through the window. The OBD X box is only aimed at industry professionals. There's a degree of responsibility and technical understanding required to safely operate this system. If you had a sticking turbine nozzle situation causing an overboost, it wouldn't be safe to turn the limp mode off and go test drive down the road for obvious reasons. Similarly, if you had a bad coil, if you drove it down the road with the limp mode turned off, you could cause catalyst damage. So this system is only aimed at industry professionals for these reasons. Because of the time-consuming nature often encountered with intermittent faults, it's better to allow the customer to do their own test driving. They often enjoy being part of the process, and if you don't have time immediately to deal with the customer's fault, they don't feel like they're being fobbed off when you send them away with a fix assist unit connected to the vehicle. You can also connect a DTC alerter to the vehicle so that they're informed when a fault has appeared and been deleted. And it will help them get a mental picture of the situation, the conditions that were prevalent when the fault occurred. I'd like to introduce you to the DTC alert function. The laptop has already been set up to deal with the code I'm going to introduce. You'll hear a short beep from the DTC alerter speaker when the fault's introduced. You'll hear a long beep when the code is cleared. There's the short beep, the fault is registered. There's a long beep for the fault being cleared. It was followed by a short beep because the fault still exists. Fix the fault. There's the long beep of it being deleted. No more beeps, the fault is cured. In addition to using the bleeper, we can also connect into these BNC connectors an oscilloscope. If we're using the oscilloscope with the DTC alert function, we can use the square wave marker and see how it aligns with other signals that we may be sampling at the same time with the oscilloscope to see what occurred at the time that the fault occurred. I'd now like to show you how to program the Fix Assist module to help you with intermittent faults. As usual, we'll start with a continuous codes refresh. We'll then introduce a fault into the vehicle. The fault has appeared. It's an air temperature sensor circuit high fault. We double click on this fault, it appears in the code delete list. Because any further DTCs will cause the OBD X box to pause, we may choose to add related fault codes to the delete list. We're now going to look at the P code database to see if there are any similar fault codes that may be useful to include in the delete list when trying to find our fault. If we click on the code in the delete list, it will highlight in the database that code, and the ones around it are also related codes. So P0110 through to P0114 are all related codes. These can be added to the delete list so that one fault doesn't trigger more than one code, causing the system to pause. Double clicking on these items adds them to the delete list. You can see all these codes are now in the delete list. It's important that you would use a manufacturer level tool to read manufacturer specific codes, because the OBD X box during the delete function will generally delete all codes, and you may delete codes that you haven't read with the OBD X box because they were manufacturer specific, and the codes that it's deleted may have been useful. If there are any manufacturer specific codes that do not appear in the database list, you can manually add them. Manually add the text in the box, click the plus sign. This will add this fault code into the delete list. As well as using the database using P codes as a search function, you can also use keywords. So if the word appears in the description, you'll find the code you're looking for. So if we type exhaust gas we started typing recirculation, you can see all the fault codes relating to exhaust gas recirculation are now listed in the database here. Everything else not to do with exhaust gas recirculation is not in the list. The one we're looking for is P0489. So we can just scroll to P0489, it's there. We can double click and that enters the exhaust gas recirculation code low into the delete list. One thing we haven't mentioned up to now, the delete code counter can be set to have a maximum, and we'll show you how to set that here. You can do this in settings. 0 is no limit. So if you scroll up to the value you want to set, the system will pause when the code count has reached that number. You see here it's at 28, 29. Soon it will pause deletion because it will reach the limit set. If you look at the bottom left, you can see the OBD check light symbol, and when the limit is reached, a cross will appear across that symbol. The limit is reached. Here we see the delete counter, and should you choose to reset the counts, you click on this. Should you decide to permanently install a fix assist for whatever reason, you can simply cut off the OBD plug and hardwire it to the back of the OBD port. The instructions are available on the website of how to do this. Those who do wish to hardwire the kit into a vehicle, we've made it really easy for you. The wiring details are on the lid, and there's no soldering, no crimping required. It makes the job super easy. Should you be concerned in situations where you may leave the OBD X box plugged in for a period of time, you may be worried that it might keep the CAN bus awake and flatten the battery overnight, for instance. There's no need to worry about that, because when the RPM signal is lost, when the car is turned off, after a period of time the OBD X box automatically enters a sleep mode. I'd just like to demonstrate the status LED on the OBD X box. When the vehicle's switched off and the RPM signal disappears, and the OBD X box is not connected to the laptop anymore, after a period of time it goes into sleep mode. Sleep mode is indicated on the LED by being on for 5 seconds and off for 0.2 seconds. When it is communicating with the engine ECU, it flashes on and off at roughly 1 second intervals. When it is deleting a code, it flashes quickly. There are hundreds of fault codes that can be stored by the engine management system. Some of those codes are more important than others, some are more critical than others. There is only one engine management light, and that is not discretionary. It will just show the driver of the vehicle that there is a fault. It won't tell you how important that fault is. So it's more important that the light is allowed to come back on to show an important code when an unimportant code may be set for deletion. And for that reason, the OBD X box is paused when a new code is triggered. Because the OBD X box uses powertrain transmission codes, these codes often apply to automatic transmissions, four-wheel drive systems and double clutch gearbox systems. So you may have a transmission fault rather than an engine management fault that you need to diagnose, and the OBD X box is excellent for getting to the bottom of the faults that you're getting with your transmission system. On occasion, it's useful to prevent the transmission system from going into limp. So if you do a continuous code delete on a transmission system, it allows you to look at other factors that are influencing gearbox control. This may allow you to get to a better, more accurate diagnosis of ultimately what is the fault that's causing the problems you've got, and rather than leading you up the garden path, giving you a red herring of a fault that's a phantom or not the appropriate component that is actually causing the problem. In the settings page, the OBD connection delay can be useful for situations where you may want to connect a scan tool whilst the OBD X box is also connected to the vehicle. Increasing the connection delay for the OBD X box allows the other scan tool to maintain communication with the engine ECU before the X box. This can be increased as high as 4 minutes should you wish. On the occasion where you might want to do an update or even a backdate, you can go into Tools, Update Firmware, and you have a list of all the firmware versions. Should you choose to use OBD X box on a K-line vehicle, you select version 20. Under the Help tab you can find useful information. The first one is the brochure. You can download that and read it at your leisure. The quick reference guide also features at the start of the software. You may find it useful to access it directly without closing the software. Similarly, the disclaimer is accessible from the Help tab for the same reason. As you can see, the OBD X box can save you time and money, and it helps you to keep your customers happy. It's a truly unique product, being a reader, deleter and counter of DTCs. It's very, very powerful. Because it uses an internationally standard connector and protocols, it is truly a global product. It can be used anywhere in the world. My name is Wayne Schofield. Thank you for your time and wish you the best of luck.